Hello, everybody, and an extremely warm welcome to the 42 Rugby Weekly. Gavan Casey here, as always, and I'm joined by my colleague with the 42.ie, Murray Kinsella. Murray, how are you?
I'm a little bit sleep deprived because it's so warm in the evenings, but I'm definitely not going to complain about the class weather. I'm loving it. Trying to nip out as much as I can in between all that's going on, because it's been a brilliant and busy and a bit of a tetchy build-up as well to the Lions test, so it's going to be fun this weekend.
Yeah, I really can't wait for this show. It's heating up both here and in South Africa, I think. Bernard Jackman, I can't help but notice that you've got an extremely different background this week. What's the story? Tell us.
I've moved house, and hopefully now I'll have a stable place to chat on a Saturday. I was on the couch in the back garden for the last month. So yeah, no, look at a bit of stability, and looking forward to chatting about obviously European Cup and the Lions.
Yeah, we'll do that. To anybody tuning in just on audio, Birch is in some kind of massive library in his new gaff, looking incredibly studious,
So
showing
classy.
Murray and I up. Absolutely. Listen, Bernard, before we get into European Cup chat and the Lions, I mean, this is Lions adjacent anyway. I didn't really want to ask you this question again, but our good friend Steve Lenthal down in Canberra, who's a big, long-time supporter of the show, was wondering on Twitter, I suppose on a scale of 1 to 0, he says, on a scale from 0 to the night before Christmas. I'm keen to hear how hyped Bernard Jackman is now. He later adds that depending on the answer, he might get up at 2 a.m. to watch the tests live.
Yeah, look, I'm on board now. The Springbok A game got me. I didn't enjoy any of the other stuff, but yeah, I just can't wait to see how Saturday plays out. And I actually think the second test and third test will be better than the first one, or more intriguing. But no, I'm an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10.
You've periodised it incredibly well, Birch. Can you talk us through the process?
Well, I didn't. It wasn't a plan. I love the Lions tour. With the whole no crowds, the fact the Boks weren't released back to the South African provincial teams. I just couldn't really get on board. I mean, the games were just too one-sided. But once that Lions Springbok A game. And, I thought the Springboks were in incredible shape, and just brought something completely different. So, yeah, I know I want to see what Gatland and Townsend... Look, it looks like, we're going to talk about selection, but it looks like the Lions are going to take risks, and I think that's going to be intriguing.
Yeah, he'll be tucked up in bed early on Friday night like a good boy, waiting for the big one on Saturday morning. We'll get into it here. Let's chat about the European Cup first. And you could be forgiven, I suppose, if you missed the draw yesterday. So for anybody at home who has tuned out a little bit or has had tunnel vision towards the Lions, similar-ish to last season, 2 pools of 12. Best 8 from each pool will qualify for a 2-legged last 16 affair this time around, then 1-legged quarter-final, semi-final and the final on the 22nd of May in Marseille. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who the province has got. Leinster reunited with Montpellier. They'll also face Bath. Munster playing Wasps, I think in a competitive game for the first time in about 10 years. So that kind of feels a little bit fresh. And their old rivals Cast, who pop up every 3 or 4 years. Probably tougher asks then, Murray, would you say, for Connacht and Ulster? Connacht have Stade Francais and Leicester, Ulster, Clermont and Northampton Saints. So what did you make of the draw to begin with? And then we'll move on to a listener's question about it.
Yeah, it kind of took me by surprise almost a little bit yesterday. I was in the middle of a Lions presser and then I remembered, this is actually happening because it is so far away. It's beginning in December, the pool stages, obviously in a very different format as well. And as it's being announced live, you remember how kind of convoluted and complicated it is. But in the end, they get 2 opponents each, and it is exciting to look forward to that. I actually think Connacht could go okay there against Stade and Leicester, Ulster, Clermont and Northampton as well. Like, Clermont and Northampton haven't been giants really in their respective competitions in the last few years. I think all of them actually are quite negotiable. Yeah, there's a bang of familiarity off some of them in terms of Leinster, Montpellier and Munster Cast in particular, but that often breeds a bit of contempt and rivalry as well. So there's intrigue there. So I'll probably forget about it now for many, many months and come back to it in December and realise that there's some tasty clashes here.
Before we do put it on the backbench, so to speak, for those few months, question here in the members WhatsApp group, members.the42.ie, if you want to get involved and these members do help to shape our coverage, as you'll see today, because there's so many good questions about the Lions as well. But here's one to begin with from Adrian Hennessy about this Champions Cup format. I'll throw it to yourself, Perch. Adrian says, have they ruined the Heineken Cup with this format? After 4 rounds, 24 teams, with 2/3 of those teams progressing to the last 16 in a home and away format, it's only 1 game less than the old format, yet incredibly less meritocratic and less likely to throw up any upset until at least the last 8. Is the quote-unquote fewer pool game a COVID residue in order for teams to travel less, etc., or could this be the format going forward? To which Sean in the group added, this format is a load of bollocks. And he was, and that went down pretty well with a couple of people who agreed with Sean. So can I get your thoughts, Bernard?
Yeah, I prefer the old format, to be honest. I didn't think there was a huge amount wrong with the way it went. I don't know what the long term or even medium term plan is from the ERC in terms of, are these is this set up because it's still COVID environment, or is this how they want to go? It's a great competition, and I think it should be cherished. I'd love the French and the English, being more competitive in it. I think will help. Obviously, the French have just won it, but I mean, in terms of, sometimes we get teams who don't put their best foot forward early doors, which I think is frustrating and devalues it. And we saw that last season when teams lost their first game, not just French, and effectively they threw in the towel. So that's not great. But look at let's see how it plays out, and I'll give it a season to settle down and see how it works. Last year I didn't think it worked that well, but in fairness, they were very restricted in terms of the games they could play, etc. So I'll wait and see.
Will you be as patient, Murray, as Bernard there?
I have to say I'd be along similar lines as those members' messages you mentioned there, in terms of it just feels very different to what it was, and it probably excites a little bit less the competition. We've spoken about how English and French focuses have been a little bit shifted elsewhere, and their domestic competition's a strength to them, but and you think hopefully something in terms of the URC improving will follow here, but it does feel in a tricky spot, the competition and the organisation even, and priorities. There's talk of Club World Cups as well, obviously, and that's happening in the background. So probably remains to be seen exactly where it fits. But for me, it's been a brilliant part of the rugby calendar and rugby history. So I hope it has a place moving forward.
Yeah, just to round it off, I do agree that it is bollocks, but we'll seg into Lions chat with an email here from Billy Keenan. This was sent to yourself, Murray. Let me just shift my phone across because it's quite substantial. So he's a recent The 42 member and first time emailer, and he hopes you're keeping well. I mean, you've already seen this. I'll get into the actual bulk of the email. I should have checked this beforehand. So Billy says, I just wanted to get in touch and ask a question. Maybe you guys would cover it briefly on the pod, but I was wondering, what do you think of Ian McGeechan and as an analyst/pundit on Sky's coverage of the Lions so far? I've been really impressed with them. Oftentimes, across different sports, when a former coach appears on the TV coverage, the weight of their experience doesn't come to the fore, whether that's because they're speaking in cliches or their heart's not in it. Whereas every time they cut to McGeechan, particularly right after the halftime whistle, I find he always picks out a really interesting point that otherwise would have been overlooked. His experience, how he views the game and management of players really comes across, and unlike other coaches who have been out of the game for a while, he views the game in its current form as opposed to seeing it through the lens of when he last coached. Just curious to hear how you found his analysis so far. P.S. Billy says, as a listener, I liked the opening minute asking the lads how they are. Nothing worse in today's remote day and age when people skip over it. It's important to ask the lads how they're getting on. I think that's directed at yourself, Bernard, rather than Murray. But going back to the actual
Vindication
issue
for you, Gav. Vindication.
Yeah, well, Gav.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to see you are doing well, lads, as always. But Murray, to get to the actual bulk of the question or the crux of it, maybe it's a tricky one for you to ask you, what do you actually think of McGeechan as a pundit, unless you think he's very good, in which case you can just wax lyrical about him for a while.
Yeah, I love analysis of the analysts on TV. I enjoy his input. He's like Lions royalty, isn't he? He's there for a kind of specific role, almost the historian of it, the weightiness of what Lions means and how powerful it can be. And he does add a sense of that. Now, Sky in the past have probably overdone that a little bit, but I think they've got a better balance this time around. Yeah, I think you add something to the mix. There's a decent mix there. Warburton, obviously, with plenty of current insight into the game. I think O'Gara, despite the 10-second delay or whatever it is, has been really good as well. He's just so interesting to listen to. Really good opinions as a coach, but he's also just an opinionated rugby person. He's got thoughts on most things, and he's got the line of the series so far with his Lionel Messi comparison and Ches and Colby. It's been used ever since. And I'm enjoying their coverage. I have to say, it's a really tricky job, particularly without fans. I don't think they've overdone the hype. I think Sarah Elgin's doing a brilliant job over there as well on the ground. So they've got that flavour for it. And I've enjoyed their coverage so far. I generally don't get to see much of rugby coverage around games because I'm usually there. Obviously, this time our plans were cancelled to go over. So I'm following a lot more on TV and I've enjoyed it on the whole.
Birch, what do you make of Geach and the Sky coverage, generally speaking?
Yeah, look, I think Geach, I agree with Murray. I think he gives you an insight that the more modern, or recently retired players or coaches struggle to in terms of his lines pedigree. Also, I think he's a real good generalist and he's got a very high game sense. So he's got a feel for how the game is gone or is about to go, which is invaluable. And, while he probably wouldn't be brilliant at getting into the micro kind of element of it, I think he adds a really nice balance. I am enjoying the coverage. I'm not sure about all the co-coms. I really like Nigel Owens in general, and I find him, a very knowledgeable and was always very good at sharing and giving opinions on things. I just don't know. I don't know if he needs to come in as often or and Will Greenwood. I just think maybe there's too many co-coms. But look, it's a hard thing to get right, and I certainly wouldn't turn it off. I am enjoying it.
It is interesting, the Owens thing, Murray, because he offers incredible insight to refereeing decisions, but maybe something that they didn't take into account beforehand, or perhaps they did and they're just taking a chance because it is a reasonably new concept. The fact that there are so many infractions and so many decisions in rugby almost dictates that he has to come in so often, and the decisions that are made and some of the laws are so technical to a more casual observer, and even at times to probably all of us, that maybe it actually is a requirement for him to just speak at greater length than even he anticipated himself,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating part of it. I had thought they might use him at halftime, full-time, focus on the big couple of decisions. And I agree with Birch, there's a lot of input. I think it's fascinating to see the uncertainty that he has as well, even sitting up there with multiple replays, angles, not in the heat of the moment. Like, I've disagreed with a few of his calls, and I think the other co-coms have as well. And you think, actually, that other co-com is right, and he's got this one slightly wrong. So it's there's a really good illustration there of how difficult a job the referees have and how big a role they're going to play. Like, Nick Berry's first up this weekend. Ben O'Keefe is coming in then after that, having got, the Independent Disciplinary Committee decided that he had got his decision around Marika Corabetti wrong, and they didn't uphold that red card. So those guys, considering what we're talking about in terms of physicality, brutality, aggression, they're going to have a real big job on their hands. So I would presume that Owens is going to really come into his own over the course of the test, because there will be some big decisions to be made.
He's going to be a busy man for sure. Let's kick off then and chat about the teams and get going with this match preview. I'll start with yourself, Bernard. What was your immediate reaction when you actually read it? Did any names stand out to you? We'll obviously get into the Conor Murray, Ali Price thing, but maybe outside of that, were you surprised by any calls that Gatland made?
Look, I can see, and I know we were getting a bit of slack last week for not hyping up Jack Conan, but I did think he would go with Faletau. I just thought Gatland would go with and back Faletau to step it up, because he's been down that road so often with him in a Welsh jersey and a Lions jersey. But I can see absolutely Jack has been excellent on this tour, and it probably shows that they want to play. All the selections show that they want to play with wit, and I think they felt that period. And unfortunately, it was down when the Boks were down to 13 and 14 when they got joy in those wider channels. But I think that's the glimmer of hope that they have, is that they can get around that rush. And someone like Conan, who's probably who is definitely more suited to the wider spaces and using footwork and getting his hands free, rather than crashing off 9 off an edge into a wall. So I'm delighted to see him. I said I thought he would stick with Faletau for the first test to give him the chance to bounce back. And so he's probably the big surprise. I saw Courtney Laws, being at 6. I think that's been earmarked for since the squad was selected. Really, Gatland has a real feel that he is someone who will, be able to match the Boks physically, and I think we saw that in the A game, that we were a little bit power shy. Count Dickey's come in on form. Ali Price, I'm sure we're going to talk about that. Bigger, I thought, since the start was going to be starting 10. Probably the wings. Adams and Reece Samet for me. I think they'd probably be a little bit hard done by, even though Duan van der Merwe has done incredibly well. I think that if we do get around the Boks, if we do get around them, absolute sheer speed is going to be crucial, because we've seen how well they scramble, and I just think being big, which and powerful, which Duan van der Merwe is, it's important. But I think absolute necessity to get to that try line quickly could be the difference. But look he's not short of pace, and Watson's is a top player as well. So all in all, I'd say Conan was probably the one that I didn't read, I didn't see, but I do admit his form has been excellent.
It certainly has. We did catch a little bit of flack, as Burden mentions on Twitter. I know you guys hate when I reply to those as well, but I kind of can't resist, because eventually we're going to be talking about Conan. We're going to do so now, Murray. When you put it into context, the last 18 months of his career, considering the fact that he hadn't played a test in 18 months until February, and he himself said on an interview with Second Captains about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which is a great listen, that he wasn't expected to be called up himself, so much so that his father wasn't even watching the squad announcement, and here he is starting the first test. So can you wax lyrical about him for a few minutes, not just to satisfy the haters, but to pay him his dues, because it's been a remarkable turnaround and surge in form that's being rewarded now?
I didn't realise you'd been involved in another Twitter spat, Gav, so that's it.
Oh, you were tagged in it. You were tagged in it, but I think you have me muted at this point.
Maybe I do. I'm really impressed by how he's seized his opportunity in the last, under 6 months. It was 18 months until he hadn't played since the 2019 World Cup for Ireland until this year's Six Nations against Italy. It was almost a little bit under the radar, his return, because Ryan Baird and Casey got their debuts. And then the England game, he was obviously outstanding. And he got his opportunity with, I suppose, injuries to other people. Caelan Doris got ruled out of the Six Nations and he returns in. And he's always had those kind of unlucky moments, or things quite haven't fallen for him in his career, and he hasn't maybe had that chance to fully unleash his maximum potential, and then things just fall into place. This is a repeated story in rugby. You've obviously got to be primed and work really hard to leave yourself in position to take the opportunity, but as he himself didn't see himself being on the Lions tour, and he's just grabbed his opportunity on here. I mean, I was surprised as well, because I thought that Gallen would have the faith with Faletau and his proven track record, and acknowledging maybe that some of the opposition the Lions played wasn't outstanding. But Conan has done everything he's been asked and more. His footwork's been excellent. His power in contact has been excellent in the close quarters. He's really comfortable out in the wide channel, in the 15-metre channel, which he'll be asked to do within their attacking shape. And then defensively, I've been really impressed as well. That was one of the things that Joe Schmidt was always on him about, his consistency, his focus in defence, his ability not to lose concentration for a little moment. But he's been fully switched on all the time here. You're seeing him get really good, effective tackles around the legs or up high and slowing down the ball carrier. And that variety has been really impressive. So he's well suited to what the Lions are going to do here as well. Birch is right. Like, you look at the team, and you just remember all those moments on the tour where you hear people on the ref mic going tempo, tempo, tempo. Even the last day after Sam Simmons scored that try where they went pretty much the length from their own 22, and there's a couple of minutes left, and you can kind of put the feet up. Stuart Hogg is screaming tempo, tempo, tempo. And it's obviously a massive part of what they want to do this weekend. So I think Conan is a really exciting selection. It was definitely a surprise for pretty much everyone, I think, and himself as well a little bit, I'd say, if he's as honest as he was in that Second Captain's interview. But he's taken his chances so far, and what an opportunity for him to fully realise that potential. The Boks definitely didn't expect to be facing him And it's nice for Gavan to have been able to spring a few surprises like that and change the picture for the Boks to what they would have expected.
Just to get more of your own thoughts on the team, Murray, and rather ask you the same question as I asked Bernard a moment ago, let me throw a couple from the group to you. And there was a kind of similar-ish theme to both of these questions, I think. One from John B. Would the lads be concerned by the lack of any star players, and he has star in inverted commas, on the Lions team? There seems to be no real game breakers in the 23. That's controversial, I would say, John B. But Ross then said, Gatlin said it's his hardest ever test selection. Do you think that's down to an abundance of talent, or rather a lack of world-class players demanding automatic selection? The only nailed-on position was Furlong.
Yeah, the amount of unknowns are high here, and that is a concern. Like Gatlin himself said it, they went into their selection meeting, him and all the assistants picked their 23s, and they only had 4 of the same forwards and 3 of the same backs. In many ways, that's kind of alarming because they don't know exactly what they were looking for in their test team, whereas the Boks, are completely cohesive, aligned is the word they always use. They know exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to go about it. I think if Gatlin's assistants aren't sure who's best matched to the plan they have to beat the Boks, that is concerning. And even guys like Ali Price and Duhan van der Merwe absolutely have been really good on tour. I would say with Price against weak opposition, and obviously he did really good things in the Six Nations, as did Van der Merwe, but we haven't really seen them in a game of this magnitude. There's a little bit of an unknown. He has no combinations whatsoever built up in his team. Obviously injuries and COVID have hampered things, but you've got Price and Bigger going into the biggest games of their career, having played 20 minutes of rugby together against Japan. The centres have had 57 minutes last weekend. The front row haven't started together. Back row haven't started together. It's the story across the team. There are obviously, they've been training together. They've got national team teammates in the same team, but people always talk about cohesion and combinations. Gatlin mentioned a lot, and they just don't have that. So he's taken a punt with a lot of this. And in terms of the star players, absolutely, there are, in my opinion, game breakers there. Like Hogg is one of the leading counter-attacking players in the world. I think Watson is incredibly difficult to tackle, even when he's in a confined space. Daly's got game-changing abilities with his left boot. I think he's been really slick in his handling as well on this tour. And obviously Duhan van der Merwe is an outstandingly powerful athlete. I think he's really in there for a bit of balance in their backline. I can imagine him being their first phase, second phase ball carrier in some of the set piece strikes, which Townsend has been working on and probably holding back, and they're going to be absolutely key in this game. So there are bits of stardust in there. Even Price's ability around the fringes, like that's his strength, his creativity. Think of that kick for Darcy Graham in the Six Nations, a beautiful bit of vision and execution. Obviously against the Stormers, again, I would say against weak defence, he was scooting really well and bringing people into play. So they have lots of exciting attacking qualities in their individuals, but it probably is a bit of a concern that they haven't gelled together yet, and that needs to happen extremely quickly, because if you lose the first test, history shows us you're going to lose the series almost certainly.
Okay, Birch, Ali Price over Conor Murray in the starting 15. Off you go.
Well, it's a sign about the game plan. I think, and I don't think it's comforting that there was such a lack of alignment on selection. I think that's scary. And that generally doesn't lead to a cohesive performance. So look, Price is obviously there to pick up tempo, and I don't think the Boks are that unfit. And obviously that's going to be something that the Lions are using as one of their key parts of their mindset, and to try and create belief. Look at the last 20 minutes, they'll be fatigued, and the Lions certainly got back into it in the second half in the Springbok A game. But I think the Boks will feel that they needed the games, much more than the Lions did. So Price has ability. I think it's a big risk. I know that they probably don't want to kick that much, but he has a tendency to get blocked down. I'm sure Razzie and Felix and Jacques Nienaber are showing lots of clips of him being ruffled at the back of breakdowns. And the reality is you're going to have to box kick at certain times. I mean, the Lions aren't going to run from everywhere and play seven. So it is a bit of a gamble. But look, I'd love to see him take the game by the scruff of the neck, and it's an unbelievable opportunity for him. The only worry I would have is about him and Duhan van der Merwe is just their experience in in really important games like this. This is another level, and they haven't played in Grand Slam deciders, they haven't played in European Cups, final stages. So that's the only doubt about them. But look, at the coaches have seen him over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and obviously Gregor knows him really well, and they feel they're ready to step up. But it is a gamble. It's a gamble from Gatland, in my opinion, to go with Ali. Of the 3 9s, he's probably the biggest gamble. But look at with that, there may be the biggest reward. So that's fascinating to see how he adapts. I mean, opposite him is Faf de Klerk is just, I know Roger spoke about Cheslin, and absolutely I agree. And he has stardust. But I think if you look at all aspects of Faf's game, and obviously he's more involved over 80 minutes than someone like Kobe is, I think he's ahead. He's the top 9 in the world at the moment. And, so Ali has a big marker to step up to make sure, he influences the game in a positive way.
Is Faf better than Anton Dupont to your mind? So
Anton Dupont is absolutely brilliant, and he has moments of absolute sheer genius. But what I'm talking about is how he looks after the forwards, how accurate his box kicking is, how aggressive he is defensively. So for me at the moment, in terms of overall over 80 minutes, I think Faf is just slightly ahead.
Would you agree with that, Murray?
I picked Dupont just because I'm always looking for the attacking rugby and that side. I know Faf can do that as well. He's definitely got a more refined kicking game though, and a sense of control of the game. 2 unbelievable players, hard to choose there. In terms of the line squad, I think it's really interesting that the team, it was always going to be important that they got the lead in this game, because if you give up the lead to the Boks, they're so good at just suffocating you out of the game. You saw it in the A match. As soon as they got to 17-3, realistically, you're kind of done there. They're so good at shutting you out. Even in the last quarter, so frustrating for the Lions camped down their own half. And this Lions team looks like it's just going to go all out to get in front. And then you have the control off the bench. So it's a little bit of a reversal of what we usually see in terms of impact. Like Conor Murray and Owen Farrell and even Liam Williams are those reliable, steady heads. So Gatland, I think, is almost banking on being in front. If they're not, they could be in a bit of trouble because, just as I say, the Boks are so good at closing out games with their tight 5 units to come off the bench as well. They'll have that bit extra power up front. So it's a fascinating selection and how he's gone about it. And he said, listen, I have no preconceived ideas about how I'm going to select on this tour. And in fairness to him, he's backed that up. He's a guy who goes with his gut instinct as much as other things as well. And he's generally been right. We should mention that his record in this kind of stuff, he's got the occasional one wrong, but generally is outstanding. And he's gone with his gut again. But I wonder, is that the same in terms of how they're going to beat the Boks? Whether that has been a longer term plan or whether that's something that's changed as they've gone. And you just hope that everyone is on exactly the same page around this plan for the weekend.
Just to pick you up on what you were saying there about bringing an element of control off the bench, will you allow me to go on a small bit of a ramble here? And I promise there will be a couple of questions at the end of it. I might throw them to yourself, Bernard. But with Murray coming off the bench, right? So if you look back on Joe Schmidt's Ireland team and you think of that game in Cardiff with the Zebo flick that always gets banded out every March or so, February, Ireland didn't even score in the second half but won the game comfortably. They built that lead that you're talking about. Even the Grand Slam game 2018, Ireland under Schmidt were experts at closing games out, and they would do it by keeping the ball a lot but equally defending a lot. They just seemed comfortable doing it, and I wonder, is that even possible to do anymore when you look at how the game has moved in the last 2 or 3 years and the number of unbelievable comebacks now that we see both at club and international level, where a team has built a similar sort of a lead, but remarkably the other team works their way back into it. It seems as though to have sterile possession and try to close a game out like that, teams are more frequently now pinged. Probably opposition are better at the breakdown. Obviously the laws have changed as well. It just seems like a more difficult thing to do, Bernard, than it used to be. And when you're bringing Conor Murray on from the bench as well, he's not really accustomed to that role either. He is an excellent game manager, but he's coming on to close out a game, which is something he doesn't often do. And I also am asking, is it harder to do that now than it was, say, a couple of years ago?
Yeah, it is. It is harder to do it for sure. But the Boks didn't have that same philosophy that that Joe Schmidt's teams had, which is just keep the ball. They literally just will put you back in your 22, and their kick chase and their defense is phenomenal. So it's different. I don't see why they, and I agree with Murray. I think if they get a lead, the reason they're so hard to catch is because they are so disciplined in what they do, and they believe in it, and they don't go chasing scores like other teams do. They don't get carried away. They're just so pragmatic. And then they have the tools in terms of athletes, the system, work rate, aggression, power to squeeze you. So it's very difficult. Can Conor Murray come on if the Lions are ahead and close out the game? Yeah, he could, for sure he can, because the Boks aren't that good at chasing the game. So I think for them, what will take them out of their stride is obviously the flip of it, of having to come out of system, have to come out of structure, and try and score and run from a little bit deeper. If you look at how they play, they really up the ante once they get in around the 22. They have that power game, but it's very hard to power your way, with consistent gain line carries from 50 yards out. So they don't tend to do that, and they save their energy. So I think Conor could definitely steer us home if we get ahead. I wouldn't have any worries about that. It's just, can we get ahead, and how I suppose locked in is our attacking game that Gregor obviously feels can get around this rush. Like, realistically, I don't think we have a second playmaker that's really accustomed to it. I mean, Daly's experience at 13, he's not a seasoned. At least with Farrell, he's played a huge amount at 12, and you could say, look, he's going to be very comfortable there, and he's going to be able to play into that rush or go over it or whatever. Like with Robbie and Daly, that's a big ask, because we saw glimpses of it in the A game, of how aggressive it is. Like, I mean, there's teams in Europe who rush. Even, France's rush is nowhere near as aggressive or kamikaze-like as South Africa's is. And then, obviously, their scramble behind it is phenomenal. You know what I mean? So it's not just a case of getting around it or over it. You still have a huge amount to do. So I just think it's going to be fascinating to see. Gregor was obviously stuck in Joburg, so I think he missed a week on the field. We haven't seen these combinations together. I think this week, in terms of a test week prep, it's going to be so interesting. Can they get it locked in well enough to be able to expose the Boks first test? Because I think if you don't expose them first test, what's Gat's going to do next week? Like, the people you're going to bring in are going to be more based around power, and we know that's unlikely to work. And obviously, if the Boks get confidence from smashing us behind the gain line, their self-belief's going to be up. So I think, Murray said statistically it's important, but I think in terms of how the second and third test could look, I think if the Lions attack doesn't fire, I think it could be very difficult to find a plan B second, third test.
That's a brilliant point. The balance there is key. Sorry, just to reiterate that. I think their set piece attack, as I said, is going to be massive. I'd say a huge amount of detail has gone into that. But if their plans don't work in 2 or 3 phases, then they've got to bring their kicking game to the party. I think the counter attack, just based on the personnel they've picked, is essential as well. They've got jackal threats in Wyn Jones, Luke Cowan-Dickey, Tom Curry, Ty Byrne coming off the bench, obviously. And again, trying to strike 1 or 2 phases. And if the Boks recover and scramble and get shape again, don't just play into the face of it, because they thrive off it. They laugh in your face when they smash you behind the gain line, and they just love it. So I think being really smart in the balance. Obviously, you want to bring attacking intent and ambition, but that doesn't mean you play to 15 phases of getting hammered backwards, make a mistake, and Ches and Colby goes down the other end on a transition. They've got to get a really smart, clinical approach to those first 2-3 phases.
In saying that, when it was forced upon him in 2017, Gatland did find a plan B, and it probably wasn't what he wanted to do, but he wound up playing Sexton at 10 and Farrell at 12, and having that second playmaker at 12, something he's not doing this time around again in the first test. But I guess he has shown at least evidence that if he needs to, he will do that next week, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not that he's completely inflexible. No.
Yeah, no, Gav, I hear you, and I sorry, I didn't mean to say he was inflexible. I think he's shown flexibility by setting this team up to try something different. What I think is the difference between the All Blacks and the Boks. The All Blacks defense is average. It's not like that. They're not set up to defend. So you can change your attacking strategy. easier against them because they give you that edge. They're an up and out type defense. So having a second playmaker, makes it easier for you. I just think that the Boks are built on defense, and I think it'd be harder to make a few tweaks in week 2 if you've preached this week. This is how we beat them, and we don't get any joy there. That's all. Because it's not that he won't change. It's the fact is it's going to be harder to change because the Boks are built on defense. Really.
A question here from Dermo Murray, and we'll chat about the Boks. This is probably a nice way to lead into it, actually, as in their match day 23 and so on. But he was saying in 1997, the Everest was the Boks scrum, and Keith Wood mentioned the hardest and most vicious training sessions he ever experienced were the Lions training sessions prior to the first test in 97 to help front up to the South African physicality. His question for the pod is the Boks scrum and maul still the Everest in 2021, or has the focus moved on and shifted to neutralise the kick and run game from South Africa to win the series?
Yeah, I think traditional classic areas of the game are essential for this again against the Boks. That's their DNA. Scrum, maul, restart, kicking game included in there, and collisions. We're talking about attack and counter-attack here, but those areas are absolutely pivotal. And you saw in the World Cup final that it was scrum for the Springboks. It was the main theme of the game. They got on top of England there and they ruthlessly punished them, and it was absolutely pivotal in the final. So if the Lions can negate that or even get an advantage there potentially, because you saw Wyn Jones put Nyakane in real trouble in the A game. I think Tyke Furlong will fancy his chances against Oxen Che, who's making his third start for the Springboks, very inexperienced at this level. Now they have that incredibly strong front row to come off the bench. Essentially, their first choice props anyway. Bongi and Namanabi and Malcolm Marks are two brilliant hookers. And I wouldn't be surprised if they use their bench even in the first half, to be honest, the way Razi operates and throwing different pictures at you. But maybe the Lions can get a little bit of parity here. Really interested to hear Birch's take on that. But just in terms of the Boks, I suppose Callan's never had a better chance. They've had a really disrupted build-up. They haven't played a lot of test rugby. They've lost Tendai Mtawira, who was obviously essential to that scrum. They've lost Francois Lowe and Orji Snyman at the moment with their bomb squad diminished. It's all going to be at sea level, so not going up to the altitude in the high veld, no home fans. So there's a lot of factors here that do tee up the Lions nicely. And even still, the Boks look really impressive. As Bert said in that South Africa game, the A game somehow they came out and looked really cohesive again and in tune with each other. So it's still a remarkable challenge. But there are factors in the Lions, I suppose, positivity ledger with the build up and the circumstances.
Just on that, apparently Razi and Jacques Nienaber fought to the absolute death to go back to Joburg for one of the tests at least. I mean, they realise what a massive advantage it is for the Lions to play the 3 tests at sea level. I agree with you, Murray. They have some injuries as well, and obviously the fact that their season didn't have the same level of competition as we had in the Northern Hemisphere is a blow. But they look in good shape. I think he's kept the best front row for the bench, and I agree with you. I think they could be on really early, and they have the potential to get after the Lions scrum. The Lions would obviously won some penalties in the A game, and they'll take belief in that. But I think that subs front row for the Boks is dangerous, anonymous, and with Snyman out. I mean, how bad is it to have someone like De Jager on the bench? You don't lose much with him. So yeah, they produce locks 10 a penny. I'm a bit shocked with Smith at 8. I wonder, was there something COVID related with the Dupree brothers where they missed a little bit? I think they could have added to it. But look, he's a very hard worker for sure. But Vermeulen and the Dupree brothers out, I think the back row battle. I think it's front five with the sub front row on the bench. That's the real area of strength for the Boks.
It is a little bit of a different makeup, certainly with Smith there. Like a guy who came through Springbok Sevens, he's certainly more in the mobile, jackal, hunting people down category than Dwayne Vermeulen, the big hitter, defensive leader, totemic figure at number 8. It's a little bit of a different mix, and he has a different skill set, but still a really good player who'll bring different blend. Their bench as well, like with the 5-3 split, is a little bit different. Damien Willemse and Elton Janči's, for me, probably not players that you would want closing out a game. I don't think they're proven, and I don't think Janči's in particular is that kind of out half at all. So they are a little bit diminished, the Springboks, and I say that with trepidation because I still think that what they can serve up is absolutely phenomenal. But I think Gatland will be pointing out all these things to his players and saying they're ripe for the taking here, lads.
What is the idea, Bert, to your mind, behind keeping, say, as you guys perceive it, the first choice front row or first choice props on the bench? Like, because it's all well and good saying you can spring them on the Lions and surprise them. They obviously know they're coming on at some point. I'm not sure it's going to be that great a shock. And equally, if you had them on from the start, like, those moments are as important as the last few minutes or the last hour, even if they come on early, in terms of scoreboard. Like, I mean, points are worth the same in the first half an hour.
I think it's interesting. I think if you think about it, okay, there's two ways of looking at it. You could say the referee makes an impression in the first half an hour, and it's very difficult to change that. That's a risk. But I also think the scrums at the start of games are often very messy. So neither team really can show dominance. Obviously, the England World Cup final was a bit of an outlier. But in general, I think the Boks will feel if this front row can hold their own for the first half, they have an opportunity also from a coaching point of view to be able to sit down at half time in the dressing room with Marks, Kitchoff and Malherbe and actually give them some clips around how the Lions are scrummaging, how the referee is refereeing it. You're really tooling them up with the best possible information to go on then and react to that as well. So I can see the reasoning behind it. I don't think the Lions will get massive gains out of the starting front row, but I'd be worried about the impact that the Boks set can bring on. And I can see being able to actually get a sense of how the game's being refereed, being able to see what the Lions are doing, what's working, what's not, and then go out with a plan as a tree. Could be very effective.
You saw it in that Georgia test, the one match they did get where the Georgians started really well at scrum. It was messy though, Birch is right, and you see the referee call go, listen, I'm just going to give this to the Georgians. And then Matt Herbert comes on for Inyekane and just absolutely savages the Georgians, wins a big penalty, and bang, there's the momentum of the game. It's just one penalty, but it's more than that. It's the kind of moment that South Africans and the Springboks just feed off. We're on top of here. We're going to put the foot in the throat and not let up from here on in. It was so typical. I was interested, Birch, on your thoughts on what Gatland said about that South Africa game. He was speaking specifically about the scrum and the maul defence. He said, we've dented the Boks ego a little bit. Did you feel that was justified? Yeah,
it was justified, to be honest. Like the scrum, the Lions did get the best out of the scrum refereeing decisions. And when Beard came on, we did stop. We choked up, I think, one maul. They got no go forward on another. So that was effective. But Beard's not on the squad, and it was very much down to his individual ability and his strength. And I'm sure that Razi and Jack Ninabar had clips of those mauls that were stopped, and I'm sure there was illegal play in that as well. So that could quickly turn out to be a weakness. It could give away 3 points. So it's look at the coaches when they speak, in press conference or post match, they're trying to get inside the mind of the opposition coach, the opposition players. Trying to find reasons to rebuild confidence, because obviously it was a bit of a blow for the Lions to lose that game, but also you're setting the scene for the referee for the first test as well. So there's method behind everything Gatland and Razi say publicly.
I'm surprised he hasn't tweeted a picture of a South African scrum penalty yet or something like that.
Exactly.
What did you make of the comments, Mer?
I enjoyed it. I always love that kind of stuff. As Birch says, that kind of not very subtle at all messaging. And I enjoy Gatz's ability to niggle. Like Razi loved that, and so will his tight five forwards. But if you're getting a reaction out of them, you're kind of succeeding in your goal. And obviously they're trying to communicate with referees. I think the referee meetings are today. And that's going to be an important part of this test match, about how they get in Nick Berry's head. A guy who I would imagine is hoping there's not going to be a lot of scrums and a lot of contentious maul decisions, because he probably wants a bit more of a flowing game on it. I don't think he will completely get that, but I think they're going to be trying to put things in his head, showing pictures of what happened in that game and previously at World Cups and that kind of stuff. So he'll have some massive decisions to make, but I thoroughly welcome anything a coach says that's not just completely bland bullshit after a match. I loved Razzie's tweets. I thought it was an outstanding bit of just razziness. I don't know how to describe him. He's always up to mischief. He's always got a glint in his eye, and I think that kind of stuff is great for the game. Obviously, he's trying to put a message in there, and if Owen Farrell comes on and there's a high tackle, maybe that's in Nick Berry's head, but the more mischief, the better for me.
100%. I particularly enjoyed how Razzie identified the Irish Examiner out of all publications as the one to reply to, his former local paper. Still have the Munster in there somewhere. As we wind towards your own predictions then, lads, Bernard, can I ask you just on something that Murray mentioned a moment ago about this being probably Gatlin's and the Lions' best chance of beating South Africa in quite a while. I mean, obviously they only play every 12 years anyway, but there are a number of circumstances that would lead you to believe that the Lions have an upper hand. Maybe not quite the two teams, but just some of the background to this tour, generally speaking. And yet, for all of the talk about South Africa not having ideal preparation, which is completely justifiable and understandable, did that A game not dispel the notion that they are undercooked? Like, particularly given that they will have all trained together since then, pretty much. Like, this idea that they're coming in a sort of a shadow of themselves, surely, and it has been largely propagated by them, it should be said, but surely it is nonsense based on what we saw of probably 8 of them only, 10 days ago or so.
Yeah, I think that was a huge blow to, so my expectations around the Lions, just seeing how good a nick they were in. And I think we have, for me now, they're favourites. The Lions have to show that they can actually unlock and find a way to beat them. I think you have to give them massive credit. World Cup champions, they have the belief. They've doubled down on the game plan. They have the athletes to do it. Like, the Lions couldn't go out and play like the Boks. You know, you can only do it if you have those tools. And even the stuff around, the criticism of their style of play. Other countries might get upset by that, but the Boks, this has been ingrained in them since they won a World Cup under Jake White. I mean, and the Bulls were dominant in Super Rugby. That they don't see rugby having to be about offloads or running from deep. This is very much part of their rugby culture. So I just don't. I'm worried that we haven't. We're going to play with tempo, but I'm not sure if that's going to be enough week one, to be honest.
Murray, is this the most? Let me try and think how to frame this. Like, this Boks team looks incredibly powerful. It's stating the obvious, and you kind of look at the potential disparity between them and the Lions, just in terms of raw power. And that maybe is being a bit unkind when you think through that Lions pack, but I suppose a little bit clouded as well by what we saw in that A game. Like, how would this stack up, do you think, compared to even 2009? And I know we're talking about a different era of the game, but that South African team was also a world champion team 2 years prior, and they were incredibly abrasive and powerful as well. And that was the fear back then, that no matter how great this Lions squad was, and it was a great squad, they may not be able to match that sheer physicality. Do you see that as being attainable for the Lions this time around, or do you see it being a legitimate discrepancy and you kind of have to play around that, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the latter. I think they are more powerful, and it is a really good comparison because they're obviously World Cup winners coming into it. They have a nice cohesive sense about their squad. We talk about combinations lacking in the Lions, but they have some lovely combinations, halfback, centres, so cohesive right through the spine of the team, even with a couple of changes. And the players like Eben Etzebeth, who are in your face, they're brilliant rugby players, all of them, as well as big, powerful men who love confrontation. And if you take them on in that aspect of the game, they generally rise to it. As you saw with their kind of grandstand defence in the A game on the try line, most teams just want to be out of there. They look to be really enjoying it, and that's such a difference. Even someone like Lucanio Am, one of their classy players, he comes alive when he's defending. Most players are just waiting to get the ball and turn over the ball, but they just live for it. So definitely, I think they're doggedness and competitiveness as well as the physicality. It's a mindset thing as well as actual athleticism. That is a concern for them. And it is going to be brutal. It'll be different 2009, obviously, because you can't get away with anything that people got away with even back then, which is crazy to think. It's not that long ago. And I do think there probably will be a big red card decision in this series somewhere that has a bit of a sway. Like everything that we've seen in Test rugby in recent times suggests that there will be. So while I don't make that prediction with any glee in any way, and hopefully everything is legal, that could have a big say in it as well. I think the Lions, you've obviously got to get some parity there. You're not going to allow Ali Price to show what he can do if you're not winning collisions and going forward. That has to be stated. Like Conor Murray almost misses out in a sense because he started that game and it was tough for him to look good. I think Ali Price would have really struggled in those circumstances as well because they weren't getting momentum and allowing their halfbacks or their backline to be in a good position. So it's really basic at the end of the day. You've got to get parity there as well as maybe looking to play away from it at times as well.
So we've mentioned a lot of areas in which South Africa on paper probably have the edge, Birch. We know that there is a way for the Lions to win this game, and we're yet to see if they can produce it. We'll find that out on Saturday. But getting into the more intricate details, say if we were to run through all of the set piece, right? You reckon the Boks, if they bring on those that front row from the bench, they probably have the upper hand there. One would imagine anyway. What about things like line out? Where can the Lions actually get at this South African team? Where are the weaknesses on the flip side here that Gatlin and co will be looking to expose on the day?
Yeah, so I showed some clips for the members pod for that webinar we had around how Lions have to be brave line out strategy wise. So, the Boks will give you the front. They'll double stack middle and back if you go off a 7-man. Off a 6-man, they'll pod middle and back. They'll look like they're going to go to the front. But if we don't get the ball off the middle or back, forget about lineouts. Unless Gatlin's got some kind of plan that they can catch him on the second or third phase, getting caught behind the gain line on the first one, and that some coaches have a strategy where they purposely, have a crap starter play to get hit slightly behind the gain line, so the opposition fold around the corner really quickly, and then you come back and get them against the grain. But I think Brett Igo showed some really good clips of how the blind side is automatically are free now. I mean, that'll be something that they'll have picked up on as well. So I don't think they'll be as keen to fly around the corner, that they'll fill the negative side of the ruck quickly. But yeah, for me, it's all about us being able to get quality ball somewhere towards the middle or towards the back. And Wales against the Boks in the semi-final, the first turnover that the Boks got in the A game was ball off the front off of Toje, and Bundy just got a neutral carry, and from there you're dead. So we need to have, Robin McBride's got a huge amount of pressure on him in terms of, has he found ways, or has he shown pictures to the Boks to get them to bite down on some kind of a dummy movement forward, to be able to open up a little bit of space in the middle or back, and because if not, I just think they'll shut us down too easily. So that's the challenge. The challenge for me is being able to get decent ball off the middle or back of the line out to be able to strike off. If not, I think it's going to be very difficult to break them down.
Dan Bigger kind of highlighted during the week as well how much it's a mental challenge as well as a tactical one. He was talking about that semi-final that you did brilliant analysis, Birch, on it, and you mentioned a patience, I think, and that was a key word. He said, we played really well in that semi-final. Obviously, they came the closest to beating the Boks in the knockout stages, but there was literally one or two moments where we slipped, we lost patience, and we gave them an in into our half. Maybe that doesn't convert into 3 points, but it converts into that kind of momentum where they feel you're on top of you and you feel like you're suffocating a little bit. So that patience is absolutely essential. That's why I actually was kind of conservative with my prediction of the team. I thought Gatlin would go for the guys who've been in high pressure, high situations, high stakes situations in club rugby and international rugby before, because those moments where you'll just slip a little bit are essential. It's a mental challenge as much as anything. Even when they batter you, say, in one defensive set, to forget about that and go to the next one and be ambitious and get that line out strike that you've been working on for 5 weeks. Just nail it and pick out that little tiny flaw that Gregor Townsend has spotted in his video analysis. So they've got to be mental monsters in this game as much as anything, the Lions.
The quality ball to which Bernard alludes, Murray, is at the, like, it does feel like the absolute essence of this. And just to follow up on what you've just said as well, like those moments that Bigger mentions against this South African team, you know, if you get blown backwards behind the gain line once, like, you better escape then and there. If it happens twice, or even if you're just sort of brought to a standstill around midfield, that's when they apply even more pressure. They kind of smell blood. They'll force an error. And in transition, they're probably the most dangerous international team in the world outside of France, let's say. Like, they are absolutely ravenous for that mistake. And generally speaking, they punish you. But if, as we were saying, they have the edge up front, or as we expect they might, how do you actually get that quality ball on a consistent basis? Aside, I mean, obviously, as Bernard mentions, that you can fashion it from a line out, but I guess when you're talking about first phase off line out or second phase, like, how did they actually get around them in this game?
Well, I mean, like, the quality, the product coming from the set piece is essential. Like, obviously they were going to pick a second row or a hybrid kind of at 6, and that's a key part of it, is having 3 really frontline options. Laws, Itoje, Alan Wynne-Jones. Itoje's calling is going to be essential. He was talking about during the week how much of a challenge it is, given their defensive strengths and aggression. But you would hope that, as Bert says, McBride and co there have come up with a really good, clear plan that they can play off scrum as well. If you're not getting possession with a decent chance for your backs to strike, you're in trouble. I think Van der Merwe will play a key role in getting them over the gain line on first phase. They obviously don't have the Jamie Roberts-esque carrier. Obviously, Robbie Henshaw can do a role, and he's got really good footwork close to contact and will be used in that sense as well. But those two guys will be key in getting them over from there. And then you're looking at using the creative skills of Hogg and Daly, playing off Bigger. Those two guys having that second set of eyes, I suppose, and decision making a little bit further out the line will be essential, because often it comes down to a decision around that edge defender with the Boks, because you know they're coming up and in hard inside the 15-metre channel. You'll see some kick space there, as Owen Farrell did it before Eben Etzebeth blocked him down. Or you'll see a potential opportunity to get a pass away, and suddenly you get ball and all hit. So your decision making has to be unbelievably accurate, because they're the opportunities that the Boks score off. Their attack is essentially built from your mistakes. The Ches and Colby created try for Am in the South Africa match was a brilliant example, as Bert showed. Kick, put you under pressure. Lions suddenly changed out of their game plan. Instead of box kicking as they would have intended, they override the call. They don't make a good decision on the kick, and Colby has space to score. You think of the World Cup final, Malcolm Marks dislodges the ball for Colby's unbelievable finish. The other one was kick return, wasn't it? Where England just get caught in the short side. They don't have enough bodies there. And Am and Mapimpi wonderfully strike. So they've got brilliant attacking flair and exciting elements on the transition phases of the game when you lose that patience, or when your attack plays into the trap they've set you. But I'm fascinated to see what Townsend in particular, like, really interesting appointment before the tour. He's a head coach, obviously a guy with massive responsibility in Scotland, but took that attack coach assistant role because he's probably so energized by the opportunity to try and find chinks in the Boks armour. So I'll be fascinated to see what he's cooked up.
I'm frightened. Bernard, start to take us home with your final prediction, although I suspect we're not going to enjoy it. I'll ask you for a series prediction then on top of that as well.
Boks, unfortunately.
Oh, dear Lord. Murray?
Yeah, I'm leaning that way as well, but like, it goes almost without saying, but I'll say it, that it is going to be unbelievably narrow. The Lions have a squad packed full of incredibly good players, and even with selection going either way, the guys who missed out are incredibly good. Some of the guys who aren't in the 23, and that does make a difference. It's an absurd concept, really, isn't it? That the world champions, the most cohesive side in the world, are taking on this rabble that were thrown together a few weeks ago, but it's a rabble of incredibly good rugby players and guys who are mentally really strong with some serious coaching intellect behind them. And as we know, there's always a big chance for the Lions. So I'm by no means ruling them out of it, but I'm probably edging towards South Africa just based on all of the things we've discussed.
No, it's fair, and they've proven us wrong on many an occasion, I should say, as is Scotland himself. I think everybody shares our excitement for it. Before we do go as well, Murray, even more excitement, and it'll be our last opportunity to discuss it before it kicks off. The Sevens at the Olympics. I was saying to you before we came on, it does feel like in all sports, the Olympic events are creeping up on us out of nowhere, and people are almost not even aware they're happening so soon. I think the opening ceremony is tomorrow, is it? Friday? We're recording this on a Thursday. So, listen, we've done a couple of media days with the Sevens players over the last few weeks. Most of them are still embargoed, but I'm sure the quotes will come out in the next few days. And like each one of them is just, there's no sense of novelty about it. Like all of them are actually transfixed on going over there and doing well and winning a medal. Every one of them has mentioned to a man the prospect of winning a medal, including like going on to win gold. I don't know genuinely myself how realistic that is, but I love hearing it. So give us your thoughts on their actual chances here, because we have spoken in the past about the magnitude of the achievement of getting there. But let's speak about it now in competitive terms. How do you anticipate they'll actually get on over there?
It's a really tough pool. They're playing South Africa first up, a proven high-level team. They're playing US in their second game, another who are always competitive on the World Series, and then they play Kenya, who again they've pulled off some massive results in sevens. All those teams actually have a longer and better sevens history than Ireland, but there's no escaping the lovely kind of tidal wave of optimism and momentum that Ireland have built up. They've had some really big victories over the last couple of years. They've grown as a force and earned massive respect really on the series. I think South Africa and USA will be very cognizant of the fact that there's potential for an upset here. I really like the way they picked their squad, the 7 specialists, loads of those original guys who've been in that program for a long time, who understand the game, who understand the intense pressure of 7 minutes per half and not making an error and being defensively really connected. And that's been a strength of this Ireland team. And then the attacking delight of Terry Kennedy and Jordan Conroy. That combination is as good as any really in the tournament. They've got serious weapons there. So it is thrilling. It's really crept up on us. As you said, I think Spain are playing football at the moment. I didn't even know that was happening at the Olympics. It's been bizarre build up really. But Ireland are playing Monday kind of overnight, 3 a.m. on Monday morning, South Africa, and then 10:30 a.m. according to the Irish Olympics website, and then on Tuesday another 3 a.m. kickoff. So they're not ideal times, but once it kicks off, people are going to kind of get swept up in that story again. As you say, there's loads of guys with class background stories, and I suppose that have made sacrifices and worked really hard to get here. So it's impossible not to like this group. Even following some of them on Instagram, Harry McNulty, if anyone isn't, is a brilliant follow. He's got all the updates from the village. It looks like a really cool, unique experience. There's not many rugby players who've been there and done this. So best of luck to those guys. They'll definitely have a big support in Ireland.
Yeah, they certainly will. And Birch, as much as it is a tough pool for them, they have the confidence as well of having beaten those teams in their own recent history. But it's an absolute ball ache of a draw to get Ireland now for the teams in their pool. And looking at them and the fact that they had to qualify so recently and played like competitively so recently in such a high stakes fashion and exceeded expectations, like they're probably the team in that pool coming in with the most, I don't want to say the most momentum, but say the most recent momentum, like the most real feeling of going over there to do something tangible.
Yeah, and they're very well organised. They have their own brand of playing sevens. They're tough, and they've got 2 absolute speedsters. So, and like the reality is, if you can score early in those games, it can be hard to claw them back because their defense is very well organised as well. So, yeah, I think they're a nightmare draw for anyone. I mean, because they'll be underdogs, there'll be expectation to just blow them away because there's other teams with more sevens legacy, but I think this team are well set up, and I can't wait to see them play. I actually will get up in the middle of the night to see them. I think they're worth following.
Yeah, they certainly are. I'm sure you won't be alone in that. Looking forward to the tweets and the members' WhatsApp group at the death of night as we tune into Tokyo, and looking forward to it all as well over the weekend as this Lions series kicks off properly with the first test. Boys, thanks a million to you both, firstly.
Cheers, enjoy the weekend.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Same to you, lads, and same to everybody at home as well. Thanks a million for your continued support, all of the 42 members. Members.the42.ie. If you want to sign up there, you get all of our extra podcasts, including Murray's Lions analysis, He and Owen Toolan have been doing video analysis on Mondays. There are extra podcasts, including immediately after games. Now would be a good time, I guess, to get involved as it does kick off properly if you fancy it. It's €5 a month or €42 for the year. Or if you use the promo code RugbyPod, you get a €5 off an annual subscription as well. I always forget to mention that at the end of the Rugby Pod. Until the weekend, mind yourselves, take it easy, enjoy it all, and we'll see you soon.